Okay, thank you for that reminder, Dennis, and all of your help with this.
No problem.
Okay, so we got enough information from surveying. One thread that I started here in terms of asking sales for feedback, I started an issue that basically is asking them, how do you sell this thing? What are you calling it when you talk to customers? And I included the list we found in the other issue. I was just talking to one of the TAMs who said I should also post that. I'm just pasting in what he said. He basically said, post it also in customer success, which I'll do. So we can look at our TAMs who talk with our current customers as well as sales who are going after actual new customers. But that's one way we can use this and see how it sort of relates to selling. So I'll keep going on that. And I think, Will, you had a suggestion here too on how we could further take that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was kind of outside of the scope of where your head was at with this, but since we have a list of various dashboards across the product, I know that like Becca had shared in our Slack channel that dashboards are kind of hard to find and are all over the product in terms of navigation. So I wasn't sure if we wanted to capture some like analytic data on how they're being used. I guess like how often they're being accessed and found and things like that. But it's just a suggestion. I wasn't sure if that was kind of outside the scope.
I think that's a good suggestion. I can reach out to someone in data and just see if they have a list of them already. They may not. They may not have compiled this, but if they have it handy, I think that would be cool to see too. I haven't seen anything like that being in product doing PIs with data. They're usually scrambling to get they have so much on their plate just to get our PIs functioning for every monthly review. So I don't know if they're doing like a macro level look. But that would be really cool to do if we could give them the list maybe in the future, even as an output from this. Is like, here's a list of all of the dashboards. You should probably be tracking these in some way or something like that. Okay. Oh, and I did skip the second bullet. I have an idea for getting it earlier in the day, but that would involve a few people working earlier in their time zone. So I'm going to reach out to them individually, and I don't want to pressure anyone to work outside of their time zone. So if no one is 100% yes, I want to start at 7 a.m. or something like that, I'll just split it into two. On every week, there'll be like an early and a later. The later one will probably be right around now, that sort of hits USA, and then the earlier one will grab Europe. So just wanted, I did create a spreadsheet to try to like align everyone's time zones, and I'm not quite at the end of it. So just wanted to mention that. Okay, the next agenda item was async added by Marshall. I think we should talk through it. So his contribution was consider defining some standards around user configurable dashboards and including this as part of the exit criteria. So what dashboards are configurable? Should they be configurable as a general rule? When is this explicitly not the case and why? So he's got a lot. We could just quickly probably go through and talk through some of these questions from the team's point of view. And then I guess make the decision. Do we want to put configurable into our exit criteria? Or do we want to have that be like another action or verb we're kind of managing about all dashboards? Like you can view it, you can edit it, you can configure it. Or do we want to have a real, like a specific take on it?
Yeah, what might help is if you can because you already have the list of like 29 different dashboards, right? So if you can go through and kind of describe, if anyone can go through it, but like if someone can go through it and say, hey, these are like viewable or maybe not editable, but you can like add filters or like change the query in some way. Versus, I think generally speaking, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like we don't really have a strong concept of configurable dashboards yet. That's something that we're exploring with product analytics. That's something that Optimize is looking at. But as far as an established pattern, well, it wouldn't be, it's not established unless it's in pajamas, right? So I don't think we have one, but we're like kind of dancing around that right now. So to my knowledge, I think most dashboards we're going to see in this list are going to be just like you can filter data down, but it's not like actually savable or I guess that's part of what we would want to define as configurable, like what is configurable.
There was a dashboard that was configurable. It's now deprecated. I can share it really quick just so y'all can see it. It doesn't work right now because it's been deprecated, but the metrics dashboard used to be, you could like create and edit directly from the dashboard. And yeah, none of this works anymore because it's being removed and replaced. But that did exist until recently. So, but only on this page, I think. And yeah, I think you could even create custom. So you could duplicate and then create custom ones, I think, as well in the UI here. But yeah, I don't know how much we want to continue using those patterns or not. And I don't know that this dashboard was on that list because it doesn't really function anymore, but I can add it to the list if we want to reference of those older patterns that were in the product. Not that we don't need to keep them or anything, but just as reference to what.
Yeah, it might be worth just
as a
historical reference to GitLab's earliest versions of configurable dashboards.
Sure.
Yeah. If you could link it in the agenda too on the point, I'd be curious just to go look at it and poke around. I didn't know that. So most of our dashboards are not. Marshall's coming from the standpoint with observability, where we've got a lot of Grafana charts coming in and configurable dashboards. So he's trying to make sure that we think about this from a high level, where we're sort of merging two worlds together with the acquisition and keeping configurability in mind.
Yeah, and I can document this as well, but product analytics is approaching configurability as a way to allow users to be able to focus in on specific behaviors, whether it's characteristics of their audience or people visiting their applications versus what they're doing, and being able to like focus on specific events that they're tracking. And so a lot of the power comes into as part of dashboard's general purpose to help answer whatever questions or what they should be paying attention to, is allowing them to fine tune that so that where they're able to get insights faster.
It sounds like configuring is almost, I don't know, but it could be setting up the whole thing or panels, and filtering maybe like a micro on each individual panel or part, but it could also apply to the whole thing, right? Like at the top, you might filter to one milestone and then like a whole bunch of things change below. So those two concepts seem valuable and could be at odds with one another or work well together. I don't know.
That makes sense. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think someone's comment about this being a facet of the pages is relevant too, and maybe part of the definition is it can be up to the design team or group team when something is configurable versus static. And then what level is that? Because the filtering, that's just kind of, it's configuration, but it's not, right? Is that a sticky configuration? Is it something saved, or is it just at the time of using the page? So it might just be depth of the description of what we mean by that.
Feels like most dashboarding products do offer configuration and editing. So like it seems like we probably, whether we want to offer that on every page, I guess I don't know, as to Justin's point, but it does seem like something that we should, if we want to have dashboards that kind of compete in the marketplace or whatever, or like they're similar to Grafana or whatever. I
think that fits into what we define as a dashboard versus a page or start page or something like that. Like I know vulnerability reports, they're about to they're working on a feature to allow that report to have multiple saved views. It's the same report, but you filtered it and then you saved that view. Is that a dashboard? I don't know.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can kind of share what we've been working on in product analytics. Kristen, you were also talking about, and this is something we're trying to figure out, is like we have dashboard level controls, like being able to filter and like change the date range, and that controls all of the data visualized below it. But then we are offering customizability within what we're calling widgets currently, but we can obviously like talk and change that. But each individual, it's probably going to be better if I just show it.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. So that way everyone can see my screen. And so this is just, let me zoom out of the way because it likes to just be the star. This is just Tim in our group meeting, just talking about like the configurability of it. So we have like an edit mode, which again, like these UX interactions are just very raw. Just trying to get like the functional proof of concept out there. But you know what we're calling these are all widgets. So like this table, there's another table above there, and then there's a line chart. All of these are called widgets. And so part of like what we're trying to figure out is, okay, we have this configurability at the dashboard level of constraining how much data or the time range. Theoretically, the user may want to do something if this is like a report or a dashboard to like constrain it further in like at the widget level. Like I want this graph specifically to like only show a specific segment of data from what the dashboard is already limited to. So like, I don't know if that's something we'd have to like, but no, sorry. That is definitely something we'll have to like document in terms of if that's something we want users to be able to do or not. Right now we're just exploring the capability of that. But yeah, it's it can get really messy very quickly, but yeah, I think we definitely want a way to like, I think we want to have standards if dashboards, should all dashboards be configurable? Probably not. But if they do, we should have some like kind of guiding principles of what they should do and how the interaction should work and fold that back into pajamas.
It sounds like a theme too of maybe the designer is configuring the dashboard with the right things and then whether we open that up to the user to further refine it or make it slightly different. But there may be states where like the designers at GitLab configure dashboards that are uneditable and they have that, they just sit there.
Yeah, you can
and they
definitely
serve a really key use case.
Yeah, for sure. Like we have a there is a functional concept of locking these widgets so that you can't, like some of these you can't change. So like it's ultimately up to the groups to like determine what they intend the user to be able to customize and not. But if they do allow the customizability too, then like making sure the controls are in place to like warn them that, hey, you're changing the date range in two different places, like be aware, like that's going to severely like limit the pool of data you're looking at or something like that.
So in the interest of time, I wanted to just quickly get through this part before we get into the meat of milestoning. And I know we've only got about 7 minutes left. It sounds to me like we may all decide, yes, we can add configuration, but I wanted to make sure that Justin, you could say your point as well. We've got one here also from Mihan.
I know observability is going to be allowing that. You'll be able to add data sets. You'll be able to create multiple dashboards off of it, select which dashboard you want, manipulate the arrangement of the dashboards, all Grafana type stuff. And they're planning on making that a tool that can be used by anyone, not just observability, right? So they'll create this framework or whatever that should be usable by any other group.
Okay. And Ihan, do you want to?
Yeah, I can quickly
Sure.
verbalize that. So the question is, how's the configuration going to be stored? Is it going to be in a Git repository? As far as product analytics is concerned, yes, because we would like to make use of the whole MR flow to because that gives a whole access to like roles and authentication, authorization on like who can edit stuff. So that's less that we have to build and less custom things that come in for controlling how a dashboard looks. So what we plan to make use of is the .gitlab directory. I believe it's already being used by another feature, but Dennis, please fill in my blank memory there for which feature that is.
For dashboards, or
No, for in general, the .GitLab directory.
Oh, like CI pipelines for like setting
Oh,
up
yes,
like
CI
dynamic and
pipelines,
static
yeah.
analysis and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, great, thanks. So yeah, it's an existing directory there for GitLab configurations inside your repo. So we would like to leverage that for dashboards. Another thing I quickly want to mention,
Awesome.
it's not really a dashboard, but I guess like the Epic board is like an example of something that's configurable and stored. And that's also customizable.
Oh, I could talk about that for a
Yes,
bit because
that's-
I reorder stuff and then it saves it and I forget about it. Or as like in product analytics, like we're having a specific edit mode where you can't move anything or touch anything until you intentionally want to do that. But that is true. That is configurable.
So configurability can just be the definition also of however we serve in this file where it shows the YAML grouped underneath the sections on the dashboard. So that's one high level. Is this what we're kind of getting to? Is this is like one way to configure a dashboard or list all of its content in the back end?
Yeah, that's how product analytics and optimizer are approaching it currently. I don't know
Yeah.
how epics are currently functioning, but we want to be able to just have everything exposed so that if we don't offer the UI to be able to customize it, ultimately customers can go in and change it themselves. And it's broken down in the level however we define the nomenclature
Mhm.
and the hierarchy of that will be how they can access it as well.
Okay. So I think it's in terms of that, like that's a really good starting point for that. And is if we define what the dashboards are, what each of those things are called in the configuration file, then we can kind of map to those. But at the end of this, like the output of this group is just going to be like the pajamas definitions. But perhaps the working group members who are here, our engineers, could start mapping those specs back to the eng specs.
Yeah,
Those teams
for sure.
and getting alignment.
Yeah, because ultimately, there will definitely be kind of like a engineering principles in terms of how we want to approach dashboards as well to make sure we're consistent across the code base. And that's just to kind of like give you a preview of what we're looking at beyond the .GitLab folder is like we're looking at, because right now that only works in the project repository that you're currently working in. And that works, but that also involves like kind of messing with the Git history of a customer's given project, which can be seen as not undesirable.
Yeah.
And we have previous patterns, security pipelines, compliance pipelines, group level project templates, where you actually designate a subgroup or a project that contains the same files. Ultimately, it boils down to a repository, but it's dedicated to that purpose. And so that's something we're exploring because Optimize is working on building executive dashboards at the group level, which we're not currently focused on, but ultimately that's where we would like to go towards. And that's going to be kind of like a overall guiding principle of like, here's where you need to store configuration data so that anytime anyone has a configurable dashboard, like if we've got 29 different dashboards here, then theoretically there's 29 different folders you can add to your dashboard repository to configure, assuming they're all configurable.
Okay. It looks like we've got already names for those things as well.
These are ours. We're open to discuss. Like we just like needed something to call them. And so we're running with it, but that's why we're here is we want to see like how people think about them. And we're happy to change it because again, this is all alpha. This is all subject to change on our end. So we're happy to update as the working group sees fit.
Okay. That makes sense from my standpoint, but I don't know what we'll end up with. Or how like a filter or things like that fit into that world too. When you have just such a simple model, like filters could be at the top or the bottom, and that's not really represented in that. It's obviously fairly simple to start. Okay, let's hop down. Do we have a consensus though, just from this discussion, that we will move forward with configurability from Marshall's original question?
Yes, please.
Okay. That could mess up some things if we don't.
Just as a side note, I added a couple docs links up above to the old custom dashboards
Oh,
feature
nice.
and the add a panel. You could add a panel and before as well. And it shows how they saved the YAML files and everything too. There's like some really good screenshots. So it might be good
Nice.
historical recommend or references as well.
Nice. Okay. So I'm just looking at time here. Quickly, let's go through the action item, which was, let's say we have 3 months on the horizon. We want to be done this working group. What are some milestones we could set for ourselves? Perhaps monthly, perhaps bi-weekly. Does anyone have any ideas of what those should be to get us to the end? And these could be phases, like right now we're in discovery, like we just did that issue of discovery and coding for 4 weeks, or writing the spec, or doing prototyping and mural, and kind of coding those to specific milestones or times in this 12 weeks.
I think we're ready to start maybe moving into the moving from investigation to definition. So like we've got a couple of different terms here, right? Like configurability. There's like this, well, we have dashboards, widgets, and visualizations, but then observability is called a panel. So like I've put it kind of facetiously of like widgets versus panels, but like how do we want to define that, right? So I think that seems like the logical next step in my opinion, but happy to hear others' thoughts.
Do we need to map out like the pieces? So like if we look at a dashboard, so we have filters, we have you know, visualizations, whatever, just like rough, like box out what is on a dashboard. And so then we know like exactly what we need to define. Because I don't know, maybe that's been done. This is the first one I'm joining. I don't, maybe you've already done
It
it.
has not been done yet. I would love to see that visually, and like groupings of things like verbs, like edit, configure, like just in some visual way. And each item that we see. Maybe mapping the pieces would come after the investigation, like next, and sort of in combo with defining, but as in referencing that whole list. Now that we have that whole list of dashboards, can someone or have some DRIs jump on and like go in and take that list and just put it onto Mural or somewhere visual? Amelia, what would mapping the pieces give you towards our definition? Like what would be the output of that?
Well, I think if we had a map, like if we have like say a box that said filters, this is like we have filters on all of our dashboards, then we know that we need to define what filters are and what they can do. And I mean, I feel like some of it's like semi-obvious, but just spelling it out in that way, at least will give us like blocks of content that we know that we need to provide definitions for, or and then designs for as we get to that point.
So kind of like it has this check versus it doesn't have this X sort of thing.
I think I'm thinking about it more in like in terms of like regions of the dashboard. So like just very high level, not in terms of like what component we're using to build it necessarily yet. More just like there will be a visualization. We're not defining what kinds of visualizations, or maybe we are, I don't know, but just like blocks of content so that we have, so we can just pin down what we need to define here. And maybe we all know what we need to define, but at least then we know we can like reference back to the dashboards that we have, and we know we're not missing anything that way.
Yeah, that
like
makes
mapping
sense.
the big pieces, like
Yeah.
the big pieces, the big chunks first, and then maybe the same effort next on the individual, like what is a chart or what is a filter at more of a micro level afterwards. Okay, so high level, we'll investigate, we'll map, then we'll go to definition, which we'll put on as a chunk after. Once we've seen it all, we'll start writing what those definitions are. Or maybe some will be obvious as we go, and we could all agree on the definitions. and then MR at the end or throughout. I know we're at time official. Does anyone want to volunteer to do the mapping from that list that's on the other issue, maybe as like a reference point to find all the regions and have that for our next call? Or is that may be way too much work for 1 week? I don't know.
I would like to, but I don't have that time for that. I'm sorry.
Or is there a team? We can
we
also
can provide like a frame
others.
of reference, like from our version of like what we're planning to do and what we think the building blocks are. And we can potentially use that as an exercise to compare against the other dashboards to see if we're missing anything. Like that seems reasonable.
Yeah. Feel free to assign that to me.
Okay. Are there any designers that would want to work on that? And I can post it to the rest of the channel too to see, but
I'm happy to help with that.
And
But
maybe Ali can help out too.
is there an issue that or should we create an issue?
let's
or-
make one.
Okay.
I think for all of these big buckets like investigate, map, define, let's just start building out the epic and create whatever issues you want, whatever you need. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I know we're at time.